So CES basically just ended for the most part. We saw pretty much everything we're going to see from Sony, Samsung, LG. Nothing from Vizio. Didn't really see much from TCL. They showed up. I mean, we could say the same thing about Samsung, but essentially, I'll be giving you guys my thoughts in this video, letting you guys know from an expert perception and perspective what these devices didn't do for me personally, and what we can expect going into the new year. Let's go. So let's dive right into it. Smack like on this video for just getting to the point. So essentially it was basically a meh show with some exciting moments. So I would say it's a mid-range show. It was okay, it wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't the worst either. We saw things like the world's first quantum dot OLED display coming out of Sony, even though Samsung makes the panel, so it's one of those weird relationships again. And oddly enough, Samsung did not present their quantum dot OLED display, which was very strange considering they're the ones who, again, made the panel that Sony's using. So very weird stuff happening, but we're going to talk about it. So the things that excite me the most personally as an expert, mini LED. It seems like almost every manufacturer, for the most part, that's worth their weight in gold, really is delivering mini LED this year. You have Sony with their first mini LED televisions ever. I'm so excited because they got full array very right. If they can tighten up their algorithm to let's say even 930E standards from 2017, right? If they can do that, this is going to fly off the shelf like hotcakes, and it's going to be one of the most popular TVs, if not arguably one of the better TVs people are going to swear by because of that alone. Never mind if they actually fix their motion problems. Man, Sony might actually take all of 2021. How's that for Quantum TV is biased against Sony? I'm actually really excited for what they did this year. And then also the Quantum Dot television that we were talking about from Sony has me, of course, excited, but it's gonna be terribly expensive. Now let's just take a second here to talk about why it's going to be terribly expensive, because you see a lot of people just saying that, but not everybody telling you why. There's really only maybe two real reasons. One is because OLED is always expensive to manufacture, but now we have an introduction of what's called a top emission method. So there's bottom emission and top emission. Top emission is basically the light coming towards the viewer versus going back towards the panel. When the light goes back towards the panel, you run into a significant decrease in brightness and just a loss of the amount of color and things like that that can hit the light filter or the color filter. Light and all that stuff interacts strangely because, of course, you're sending it towards the back of the panel. So you don't want to do that. But the problem is you can't recreate the RGB structure like you could on a small tiny cell phone on a bigger display, because it, number one, becomes very expensive to do so, and number two, becomes extremely hard to produce because then you run into pixel sizes that are smaller than the mechanical components that you're putting on the panel. So the challenge has always been to try to get close to what they do with cell phones, how they have a top emission method that recreates the RGB color structure, but they can't do it. So what they do instead is they use a blue light, and they send it through and they hit quantum dots with it to give that effect. And it's wonderful, but we know that's going to be terribly expensive because, again, top emission methods are always expensive on large screen displays. I mean, for crying out loud, your cell phones are like $1,000 these days, and they're like they're like this friggin' big in most cases, right? So you can only imagine that's only going to get worse as time goes on. But even though most people won't be able to afford it, it's nice to know that the technology is out there, it's viable, it's working, brilliant. Now, we have another aspect of this. We're talking about mini LEDs. I don't care what anybody says. I truly believe mini LED is the future of television for one particular reason. One, it's going to be years before this kind of quantum dot technology and OLED becomes affordable, period. Two, mini LED got way close, and I mean way scary close to what OLED was producing. It did, with TCL with their 825, and they're not even good at algorithms and stuff like that. So if you take somebody that knows how to algorithmically process something or put something together, it's gonna get nasty really quick, and we're gonna get some monstrous TVs. Well, what do you know? Sony just made a mini LED TV. Isn't that crazy? But then you also have Hisense come into the fray with their mini LED TV. If they can tighten up the contrast, which has been my biggest complaint with them, is that they need more depth, and mini LED is known to give that depth. Hisense might actually take, again, all of 2022, because, I mean, literally look at the fact that they're going to be priced so competitively like they are every year, and if they do that again, it's a wrap, dude. It's totally a wrap. And I already have the prices, by the way, so I know they're priced competitively. So I'm over here just sitting here like, man, this could be really good for them or really bad. Now enter LG. LG is probably one of the more disappointing ones. They're just kind of pushing a brighter OLED display. They're talking about Evo. Evo doesn't really excite me much because Evo is literally what we already have. They're renaming it, they're calling it EX, but I mean, honestly, it's Evo. Now, I'm not excited about by the way, any manufacturer that's talking about next generation brightness, because when you talk about OLED technology, you have to worry about two things. One, the encapsulation method, and two, the level of voltage that you're sending to these displays to control heat. Of course, now they're introducing the concept of new heat sinks and things like that, but that doesn't solve your problem. You still need to drive more power to be able to hit those levels of peak brightness, and that's where things get dangerous. We've never tested long-term these heat sinks that they're putting on these things, so it's going to be a beta test. What they're going to have to do is get information from people who buy those televisions, receive feedback, maybe good or bad, and when it's negative, they're going to have to issue firmware updates, if at all possible. And then, when that's all said and done and they already have all the information, they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and take all the negative feedback and everything they heard about that product to the drawing board and try again next year. And you have to wait for the new devices to come out just for these problems that may or may not come up with this new technology to be solved. It's not ideal, and it's something that I think a lot of people are kind of overlooking in the hype season, right? Everybody's like, oh, I'm so excited. Tone it down a little bit. You're a beta tester. Let's call it what it is. Any new technology, first gen tech, you're a beta tester. Mini LED was no different. The TCL LEDs, or mini LEDs, were all a beta test. They had some serious problems, which I showed at length. Of course, people don't like that, but when you're an actual reviewer, that's what you do. You put out the good and the bad. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this, and it's going to be one of those things that maybe might be a little risque for some people, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. What you're watching when you watch HDTV Test, Digital Trends, Be the Installer, Stop the FOMO, they're advertisers. That's what they do. They find a TV they like and they advertise it. I don't do that. I give a report based off of what these TVs do. So if the information appears different, or maybe it seems like I'm biased towards one brand versus another, just go into my playlist section and look at reviews that I've done through the years, because trust me, they're all there. And then you can find when I was really excited about each individual brand. There isn't a single brand I wasn't excited for over the course of time. It's just they need to maintain that same level of energy. You ever heard the expression, keep that same energy? They need to keep that same energy going into the next year. And if they fail to do so, I'm going to be the guy that tells you that, so that they maybe go back to the drawing board, like we were talking about earlier in this video, receiving feedback, going to the drawing board, making something new happen. That's what we do here. So hopefully they do that, but either way, I'm going to be on the ball and making sure they, again, keep on it, keep to it. As far as CES goes, though, LG talking about more brightness, and really everybody's being a little bit vague about what this means for burn-in. People say it's probably not going to be a problem, probably not going to happen. That's great that they feel that way, but honestly, as a consumer, I'm concerned because this is new territory for OLED, and we know you don't want to drive more voltage to OLED. And so, again, we're going to have to put a pin in that one. Also, then you have, again, more concepts kind of coming out from like Vizio and like, you know, even Samsung, where they just kind of aren't showing you much at all. And now Samsung's coming out with this Neo 8K Mini LED. Yet again, Neo QLED, not new. We have it already on the market, right? But what really bugged me about Neo QLED, as you guys saw in my last upload, is that they're talking about perceiving what we can see with our own eyes. So Samsung's already false advertising. That's not going to make me buy. That's just going to make me inform other people that you're trying to scam them into making them think that you have color like what we see with our real eyes. So, of course, that didn't work. And then, then you have Vizio, no show. Samsung really bugged me this year, though, because they spent most of their press conference at CES talking about climate change and things like that, and they might as well have broke out the whole global warming initiative speech and how they plan to change the world for us. Listen, I'm all for everybody recycling, doing their part, and being responsible, but let's be real. Let's cut the shit and let's get 100% real. Samsung and Sony are on that bullshit, and I'm going to tell you why. They're sitting here talking about climate change, the economy, as they flew to CES, which uses what? Gas. Their trucks deliver stuff to who? You, the consumer, which uses what? Gas. They talk about all of this shortening of their footprint, when meanwhile they use bunch of plastic, Sony especially. And it gets to the point where it's really irritating for me that they want to sit here and play the card of, oh, we did this for the environment. No, you did that so you can have bare minimum manufacturing costs. It costs you next to zero. Your profit margins are massive at that point because you're still charging brand new product pricing. Let me be very clear. You're buying a refurbished TV when over 30% of it is recycled materials. That is a refurbished product. It is coming from a bunch of used items that one point could have been a piss bottle, one point could have been something else, okay? You have no idea what it could have been. That's my problem with this. I don't want the possibility of it could have possibly maybe have been a tampon holder at some point. Like, I don't need dirty shit like that. And you don't know where they're sourcing this plastic from. Counteractively, again, even though you're buying what's essentially refurbished plastic, which that's what recycled plastic is, you're not getting any cost reduction at all. It's still blasting off at the highest point possible. And I think that's the biggest crime here. You're seeing these manufacturers, these massive conglomerate corporations save big, but they're not passing it off to the consumer. That is a huge, huge violation in my book, and here at QTV, that's just what we talk about when they do stuff like that. That's anti-consumer. And believe me, these TVs are not going to be perfect. Right now, like every year, they're hyping it up, but when an expert like me gets it in my hands and I compare it to last year's TVs, they're going to be up in arms about why what they did was so much better. And I think, honestly speaking, if we're being real about the hype of CES, this is one of those wait for somebody that knows what they're talking about to jump in to the fray and talk about these TVs. And I'm not talking about the advertiser that you're going to be watching. I'm talking about an actual expert that's going to test these TVs fairly and hold them to what they did last year. And as far as I understand, I'm probably one of the only people on YouTube that will do something like that. You want that information, keep it locked to Quantum TV, and we're going to make that thing happen. But that being said, I'm excited for some things I'm not. Let me know what you guys think about CES 2022. And as always, thanks so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. Until the next video, see you guys later.